Hello, welcome to this short recording on effective postgraduate writing using critical writing. My name is Andrew Struan and I am one of the staff members in the Learning Enhancement and Academic Development Service, but everybody calls us Leads. What this short recording is going to look at is firstly the hallmarks, the signs of effective postgraduate writing, so the types of things that we are looking for in your postgraduate level writing. And then we'll have a chat around about the postgraduate essay writing strategies. So thinking about how to approach your writing at an advanced postgraduate level. So if we think first then about what effective postgraduate writing should do, the types of things that we are looking for in your work, and the way in which you can showcase to us your abilities to complete these tasks. So what we're looking for from you then is firstly the ability to identify and define gaps in your field. As a postgraduate student, you are working at the very boundary of mankind's knowledge. You are working with the most up-to-date and the most current understandings in your subject area. As a result, you will be able to see that there are gaps in the field, there are spaces in the research, there are niches that need to be occupied. This will become especially the case when it gets to dissertation time, but we're looking for you to be able to work with that most current up-to-date understanding. From that then, we're looking for you to do things like generate questions and form hypotheses and test literature and test research. Your dissertation will be the biggest example of the generation of a research question, but you'll also find that actually through the process of building up your essays and your other submissions through this year, that one of the things that we're looking for you to do at postgraduate level is to be able to generate questions around about that current discussion in the field. And you do all of this through a review, an analysis, and sometimes a summary of relevant literature. You'll find that this year will probably be one of the most intensive with regards to volume of reading. And one of the things that we're looking for you to do through your postgraduate year of study is think about relevant literature. We want you to be able to critique it, we want you to be able to analyse it, and we want you to be able to investigate the strengths and the weaknesses of the academic literature around your subject. From that, then, we want you to be able to synthesise a wide range of materials down into your discussion. What I mean by that is we want you to be able to take different pieces of information, different pieces of evidence, different pieces of discussion, maybe from, say, for example, 5 or 6 different journal articles, where they're all fundamentally talking about the same thing, but maybe using, again, for example, different evidence to get there. What we want you to be able to do is package all of that down into perhaps one sentence in an essay, where you're showing us that you can synthesize, you can draw together these different pieces of literature, these different discussion points into one coherent whole. We also want you to think perhaps about the adoption of appropriate methods and appropriate methodologies, so the ways in which you approach answering your essay questions, the ways in which you approach your dissertation, especially in very methodologically driven subjects. We want you to think and reflect on the methods that you are using. And then because you're working in this most current and up-to-date understanding, then we want you to be able to analyse and judge evidence with an exception that there is not necessarily an accepted answer. So what I mean by that is that we might not genuinely know the answer to the question that you are asking yet. And that's okay. And we want you to work with evidence to try to get towards an answer. And you do all of that through engagement in sustained pieces of research, sustained pieces of argumentation, through the ability to critically and coherently write and think. So that's a kind of our checklist of effective postgraduate writing. One of the ways in which we approach this then is through our style of writing. And here we have what we would call maybe 2 styles of academic writing. You have on the one hand what's called relevance. Relevance is the style of writing that we would tend to see from undergraduates. Relevant style of writing is where you focus on the organisation of other people's information. Professor X says 1, Professor Y says 2, Professor Z says 3. As a result, your thoughts, your interpretation is not at the forefront of the essay. And because of that, the development of meaning, the critique of idea, the critique of concepts can't flow through. And then when you have that, the ability to structure an argument and come to a conclusion is actually really difficult to do. So if your essay is structured around, for example, Professor X says 1, Professor Y says 2, and Professor Z says 3, well, the only conclusion you can draw there is to say, so in conclusion, Professor X says 1, Professor Y says 2, Professor Z says 3. There's nothing else to say about that. What we want at postgraduate level writing is what's called cogency in writing. And this is where you focus on engagement with meaning, with concepts, with ideas, and with the critique and the development of the argument around about those meanings, around about those ideas. So your entire pieces of work then are all argumentative, and you have the development of an argument throughout your pieces of writing. And then underneath all of that, you have empirical research, academic work that underpins and defends the lines of reasoning that you're adopting. So the way in which we do that then is through adopting what we will call argumentative or analytical writing. I won't read through all of these, you can look at the slides on your Moodle, but what we're essentially looking for you to do is shift away from descriptive writing, where you tell us facts, where you list us details, and move more towards argumentative or analytical writing. And this is where you pick apart significance, you judge strengths and weaknesses, you make judgments, you argue a case, or you give reasons. So what we're looking for you to do is get beyond just simply stating a story or telling us facts or listing information towards critiquing and analysing the case. So let's look at a couple of examples of that. So descriptive writing, we'll talk about the data. The data shows that the incidence of asthma rates in children under 15 years old increased rapidly from 1977 to 1993. What you're doing there is describing data, describing information. What we're looking for though is that description of the information remains important because we need to know what happened, but what does that mean? What does that do? What does that tell us? Well, it suggests that one of the causal factors was particularly prevalent during this time. So it's about taking the data, taking the information, taking the evidence you have and telling the marker not only can you understand the evidence, but you can also then look at it in order to be able to see its cause, its effect, its impact, or its significance. We have a similar thing when it comes to theories. What we'll tend to see at undergraduate level is that theories are explained. So Carl Rogers' theory of a person-centered approach focuses on the freedom of the individual to determine what values should be used. That's fine, and that's telling us what that theory says, but at postgraduate level, what we want to see is, well, why does that matter? Why is that suitable? Why is that applicable? So it's particularly suitable for particular people because it does something. And what you're doing here is showing us not only do you understand the theory itself, but you understand where and how and why you would use it. So we've got this focus then on this argumentative and analytical writing as the centre feature of your work. But how do we get to that? Well, we start by thinking about approaching the essay. Your postgraduate essays will have been set up and created to challenge you on particular concepts and particular ideas. Your essay question will have a point. What is the thing that the marker is looking for you to do? What is the thing that the marker is wanting you to engage with? Most of the time at postgraduate level, that will be an up-to-date, a current debate, a current discussion, or a current understanding. So the point of the question will be for you to be able to show the marker that you can grasp the evidence, the discussion, the theories, the interpretations around about that question in order to be able to nudge us towards an understanding. You're showing the marker here that you understand the point of the question, that what the question is challenging you to do. It's challenging you to think about that particular topic, that particular subject in an in-depth, detailed manner. Next question to think about then is, well, how can you answer the question? Can the question be answered? Is there an answer to the question? The answer to that might genuinely be no. If you can answer the question, how will you do that? So what would be appropriate and relevant material, appropriate and relevant evidence, and appropriate and relevant discussion or analysis in order to be able to produce a sound, convincing, defendable answer to that question? And then the other element to consider is, what are all the areas of the question? You'll probably find that your questions will challenge you in word count and challenge you in concision and focus of your writing. What we're looking for here then is for you to think about the areas of the question, the topics, the themes, the discussion points that you might draw out into the question, into your answer, to the question, and then think about the prioritization of these. There will probably be too many discussion areas for you to confidently and capably and coherently discuss all of them in the same way. So it's about prioritization, it's about being strategic here around about what are the areas of the question that you need to focus on, and then a justification for your marker, a justification for your reader as to why you have chosen to look at those areas. So when you do that, it's important that you include, in the first point, evidence. Evidence is the proof of the thing. If you have no evidence, you have no argument. If you have no evidence, you have no proof. If you have no evidence, you have no essay. So evidence should be the product of systematic and rigorous research, either your own or another academic's. So that can be things like a close reading of a text, analysis of a primary source, interpretation of a discussion, interpretation of academic debate. But that is the thing that you can base your argument on as a solid bedrock. And at postgraduate level, we are looking for a good, solid amount of evidence in order to be able to check the lines of argument that you're using. We're also looking for theory. Some subjects will openly call this word theory and use it as a theory. Others will maybe have a school of thought or an interpretation or might not use the word theory. But theory, fundamentally in arts and social sciences, is used to describe how the social world works. How do we categorize, conceptualize, put into frameworks, put into academic schools of thought the evidence that we have? Well, we do that through categorization, through thematicalization, I guess, through putting into themes the discussion points that you have. And that's where we use academic sources to further our understanding of theory and approach. So in order to get there then, we start by building up plans of the types of things that we're going to do. And we have to have questions around about our reading. So when you're approaching texts, when you're picking apart the text, when you're looking for this evidence and these theories that we were just talking about, you are starting by asking actually sometimes quite simple questions of your reading. What, where, when, how, why, and who. Once you ask those questions though, you might be saying, well, what's the argument here? Where's the evidence? When was this written? How did they use that evidence? Why did they adopt that particular theory? Why did they adopt that particular methodology? Who are they writing for? But then you'll move beyond that. And then you'll be looking at the constructs of their argument. Well, in what way is that proven? How do we know that's the case? So who says that's the case? How have they used a particular theory? How have they proven that with evidence? And it's about asking these questions of your reading and then also of your own work that you start to be able to pick apart that use of evidence and that use of theory and get towards that critical evaluation and critical writing that we're looking for. And so what you have then after that is questions that guide your reading, and they give your reading a purpose and a focus. And then these questions can be grouped. And they can be grouped based on patterns, on themes, on topics, on similarities or on differences. And once grouped, they become the themes or the topics in your answer. So what we'll see then is that as you do reading around about this, you'll see that there are themes or topics of discussion from multiple different authors that you can group together into one particular topic or one particular theme. What we want to see then is that your discussion is idea-driven. So it's driven by the ideas, by the concepts, by the themes, and is not author-driven. So it's not Professor X says this, let's talk about Professor X. It's not Professor Y says that, let's talk about Professor Y. It's about here is a concept, here is a theme, here is a discussion, and then you have the references underneath that to provide the evidence base. But it's about being driven by themes, by topics, and by discussion points. And so the way to think about this then is to think about having your different topics, your different discussion points, and then underneath that thinking about, well, what evidence do I have? What theories do I have? What interpretation do I have? And do I have enough here to support each one of the topics? And this becomes one of the challenges of postgraduate level writing. When you're tasked with slightly longer pieces of work, so maybe like 3,000 or 4,000 words of an essay, or 10, 12, 15,000 words of a dissertation, this planning becomes much, much more important. Because when you get to that length of writing, you need to think about the different topics, the different themes that you're presenting, and then you need to think about the evidence base that you have on which you base your argument there, and then you also need to think about how you're interpreting that. So we'll come on in the second recording to talk about argumentation, and we'll take this a little bit further. But I just want to kind of re-highlight here the key things that we want postgraduate level writing to do. So we want you to provide a comprehensive and an accurate analysis of a topic. As I was talking about at the start, we want you to investigate a topic, to push that topic's understanding to the very boundary of mankind's knowledge. And we want you there to show both a depth and a breadth of that understanding. So we want you to be able to show us that perhaps an essay question impacts on 5 different key areas. But for the purposes of your essay, for example, you'll maybe say that 3 are most important. You know that 5 exist, and you tell the marker that 5 exist, but part of your argument is to say, well, we're going to focus on these 3 elements for specific reasons. We then want you to have that ability to synthesize a wide range of materials, to display that clarity of argument and that clarity of expression of that argument, which we'll come on to and talk in the second recording. And then that argument should be sophisticated. It should have logical development. It should have effective use of appropriate and relevant material. It should be supported in all cases whatsoever with evidence. And then you use theories and you use data to support and to develop and to enhance and to underpin those arguments. So postgraduate level writing is the next step up, obviously, from undergraduate level writing. We're looking for more from you than we would expect of undergraduates. And the key thing to keep in mind is that approach of critical evaluation, criticality in your writing, and the ability to structure in an argument using evidence and using theory becomes one of the most crucial and essential building blocks of postgraduate writing.